Good afternoon. I'm Larry McGee with Bridgestone. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce this retail conference's next speaker. Neil Cole has served as the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Iconix Brand Group since its public offering in 1993. At that time, the company was called Candies Incorporated, a footwear company operating responsible for sourcing, merchandising, sales, and marketing. Then in 2005, he restructured the company from an operating company to a brand management firm specializing in marketing and licensing. From 2005 to today, he led the acquisition of over 30 diverse and powerful consumer brands. Neil Cole's vision to create the unique business model of Iconix has allowed the company to remain acquisitive and while focusing on the marketing, licensing, and trend directions of his brands. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Neil Cole.
Well, that was awfully depressing, trying to follow that. I'm trying to think, is it like an analogy of like the best baseball hitter to like the number 9 hitter? But wow, what a story, that Costco. So a little bit about, I guess, myself and mini Iconix. Actually, I want to start just talking about last night in the school. When I was invited by Terry to come, I didn't realize what I was coming to. I thought, Terry had a few people somewhere in Arizona that we were going to meet. And last night hearing about the Terry Lundgren School and listening to the students was pretty exciting and impressive to me because, I always enjoy speaking to students. And the reason is because I guess through so many years and learning and so many years of trying things and failing and moving on and fighting persistence, I think it's an amazing lessons for students. And the only thing I want to say to the group in the back, this next thing I'm going to sound like my grandfather used to say, when I was this, it cost 5 cents to a hot dog, etc. But just think 20 years ago, or even 15, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. And when I was your age, even before, there was 100 department stores, not just, a couple. There was such a different world. And, I think what you're learning today, you're learning, but your future is going to be learning how to navigate the future because you're in a game. And it's the one thing that you're going to learn is that everything is changing. And what you learn at school and what you learn at this conference and what you learn from these great other leaders, it's constantly moving and constantly changing. And that's what's so exciting about it. And what I've learned in my career is, when I'm excited and when a 10-hour day seems like an hour or two and I have a lot of passion, things work. And when I'm trudging through it, things don't work. So just encouraged to find your passion and keep navigating this exciting, changing world. What you guys are living through is just incredible. And watching my 8-year-old, school me on the, on the internet, and it's just an exciting new world of retailing and also just media and communication and everything that's happening. So a little bit about my story, and I grew up in this business. As my family was in the shoe business, and we had a shoe factory in Brooklyn, which there's not a lot of shoes made in America anymore. But we used to make shoes, and we hit on a brand called Candies, and it became a very, overnight. It was during designer years. My dad was making, I think about 1,000 pair of shoes a day, and we found this item, and overnight, 10 million pair of young ladies wanted to wear Candies with their designer jeans. And the company blew up and did a couple $100 million. And I graduated law school and joined my dad and my brother in this exciting business. And always fascinated with licensing. The concept of if you have a great shoe company and you have a desired brand, you could extend it onto other products and people send you money. You don't have to send them anything. You just have to do a great job with your products and your brand, and you have to and you could extend it into other products. That was always a fascination of my career, up and down, through 20 some odd years of finding my way. But I was in the shoe business for most of it. When my dad sold it, and I ended up buying it back. And I worked in the shoe business, on and off for about 10 or 15 years, trying to figure it out after my brother left to start his company, and I was CEO of Candies, and we had to reinvent it. When my dad sold it, it had gone down to Montgomery Ward's and Sears, and we bought it back like 10 cents on the dollar from the leverage buyout, and we started making Candies exciting again, and we put it on. Actually, Jim was telling me, it reminded me about Jenny McCarthy and doing some crazy things with her semi-naked or maybe all naked on a toilet. And just kind of showing the shoes, and at the time there was a new thing called MTV and a new show called Single Dad, and Jenny was the girl. And so overnight we made a little sensation, and our goal there was to make sure the kids didn't know that their mom wore Candies. And so we had to reinvent the brand, and it showed how brands could be reinvented. So we went in the shoe business, and on and off, and always a public company. I always, I guess, always liked the concept of trying to raise money through the public markets and living and breathing the stock market. But for 10, 12, 13 years, my public company went like this, up and down. And sometimes, we were making shoes for teenagers, and we were, as the world changed, first we were Italy, then we were Brazil, and, later part we were all in China with everyone else. And it takes 6 months to make shoes, and teenagers, if anyone has teenagers, they kind of change their mind, and depending on what other people are wearing. So we went like this. If they liked our shoes, we were booming, and if they didn't like our shoes, we had a tough time. And me notice as I'm not going to tell people what I'm wearing. Whatever, Armani. But he's not here, and who cares? But, I was, as a businessman who worked hard and loved what he did, at the end of the day, I realized that I was reliant on my designers. And if my designers had, my head designer, which in retrospect, looking back, not going to say names, great guy, and we were booming in the early 2000s, and his wife ran off with the female yoga instructor, and this guy was distraught, and my shoes sucked for about 18 months because his wife fell and decided she liked the yoga instructor, and and that was my existence. I had to live on other people's fashion desires, and so late in my career, I guess late. I hope it's not too late, but 45 years old, I struggling. Company was we were doing about $150 million. I think the stock was at $1, because we were having a tough season, and I guess we had high heels with people at flats, but we had 35 retail stores. We had a handbag division. We launched a fragrance. We were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. We actually bought a jeans company because I'm a little ADD and I like to do a lot of stuff. But the problem is, besides for designers, I also had to operate. A horrible operator. Terry was just talking about inventory management. I used to sit through these meetings with the old days when they had the computer reports this big, and trying to figure out where everything was, when it was coming, matching it up. So not only was I relying on my fashion guys, I was relying on operations, which I had no patience for and wasn't very good at. So in 2005, about 8 years ago, came up with an idea, which I tried early in my career unsuccessfully, that if I offloaded the Candies brand, and at the time we owned a brand called Bongo, to two companies. One was, and we did a little bidding war between Kenneth Cole, because he was helping me with this guy Steve Madden, who was in jail at the time, which made it tough to negotiate. But and the consequence, they took the whole $200 million business. We would get 6%, 7% royalty, so we'd get $14 million, and I would leave my $40 million overhead to these two guys, and I would walk away and move to the city, also going through a divorce at the time, which tumultuous life at the time. And 10 of us were moving to the city and getting a little area and starting an ad agency, or we were going to do advertising for the licensees. And because I couldn't handle, jeans and shoes and stores, and I was also out of money, which was also another driving factor at the time. So we offloaded the business and we became a licensing company, and we were getting $12 million, and we were in theory going to spend 2 or 3 and do some advertising and survive for another day. And then the turning point where we were a public company at the time, the stock started moving. There was a brand called Joe Boxer for sale, and Joe Boxer, they had a contract with Kmart or Sears to pay them $20 million a year. I said, how can we afford that? Well, there's a $50 million deal with Sears Kmart. You can go borrow against the contract. So we borrowed the money against the contract, which at the time was pretty innovative. I think we paid like 12% interest, and we put the rest with our stock. So we bought Joe Boxer, got $20 million of royalty. We hired 3 people, did a little advertising, $18 million came to the bottom line. And I said, I said, this is a good business model, and we bought 30 companies. And today our business, we do about $13 billion. Company's going to bring in about $450 million royalty all over the world, and company's worth a couple of $1 billion. So, but going back to, I'll show you a little bit of the IP we own and the brands that we've bought. But, it's also going back to what was happening in time. A traditional company, at the time I grew up, not so long, but 10, 20 years ago, the rage of the street I was on 7th Avenue was Liz Claiborne and Jones, New York. Those were the giants of our time. And they had retail and wholesale. And, if you look at a traditional company on the left, and this is the slide that I've been using for 7 years with Wall Street, trying to explain what I do for a living. And, if you have to do all those things on the left, you have to market, license, trend, retail sales, inventory management, especially if your CEO is ADD. Doing all those things on the left is really hard. And most companies on 7th Avenue they were buying 10 or 20 brands. So you were doing all those things on the left for 20 brands. And how the hell can you do that well? And I think a lot of those companies are changing their names and shrinking and going away because they weren't focused. I think you see a company like Costco, you see a company like Macy's. These are focused companies who do one thing really well. They shoot with a rifle, and they're just the best at what they do. And companies that I've learned in my career, when you try to do everything, a little bit of everything, you don't do it so well. We market. We're the marketing agency, licensing. We're an ad agency that owns its own brands, and we got out of all the things, and we partnered. But we think are the best in the world and the best in class, and I'll tell you more about them. Here's a quick little video to show you some of our brands and what they do.
A material girl is a girl that is interested in fashion and interested in music and interested in fun.
one of the wonderful things that happened to us as I saw the world changing somewhere about 7, 8 years ago, I realized, and one of the decisions to get out of the shoe business, there was a couple, it was really hard for us to have much leverage with the stores. And there was a couple, what I call channel commanders who kind of control, whether it be the department stores, and which was very difficult, which is one of the reasons we decided to change the model. But I also realized that department stores and mass stores and pretty much every store had what I would call a sea of names. They called them private labels or et cetera. I guess you'd call them private labels. So as we started looking and buying brands, we'd look at a brand and say, wow, if we can buy this brand, it's so much better than X on their floor. And we went to top management and we presented research which showed 95% of the people know this brand, know Danskin, X amount of the people know this brand. And we convinced them for a small royalty, let's convert the whole floor, we'll work with you on design, let's make this big part, our brands which are nationally known, which some could argue were getting squeezed out as there were only a couple of retailers. So we took great intellectual property and we created close to $7 billion of branded business by working with the stores. One of our best executors is Walmart's done an incredible job taking our brands, OP and Starter and Danskin and Target with Massimo and Fieldcrest, and pretty much down the line, we've created a lot of share in America by walking in with great intellectual property that everyone knows and saying, you have X, it doesn't mean anything. This way we were able to get big market share quickly rather than starting and say, we'll test you and give you a rack or a half a rack or another rack. And this was a big strength of how Iconix was able to build such market share over the last 5 years. It's also wonderful for the store. They get a national brand. They get a brand they don't have to worry about that someone's going to Google and find out the cheapest price. We give them exclusives in their territories, and they can control pricing and making sure that it's a good value. They don't have to worry about the other end of the mall, someone's going to mark it down. So a retailer gets a strong brand. Most of them have great sourcing capabilities and have become vertical by this time over the last 5 to 10 years. So the retailer gets high margin or private label economics, exclusivity, sometimes get rid of the middleman if they don't want someone else to help make it for them. And we also act as an ad agency. We add a lot of value, which I'll show you, and hopefully they believe as far as making the brands relevant. I've heard a lot, well, why doesn't the retailer do that? Because the retailer's focused on save money, live better. They're focused on the bullseye. They're focused on Macy's. We're marketers focused on that brand, and usually the big marketing departments are focused on the masthead, and they can't market individual brands throughout that store, and that's one of the big values that Iconix brings to the table. This is more of a Wall Street slide, but we like to show diversification for Wall Street, that we don't depend too much on one brand or one business. I think our biggest business today is about 7-8% of our revenue. And we're now controlled, working really hard on, Peanuts has become a big growth, and we're working on other brands in the entertainment business, a lot of athletic businesses on diversity. And we also, sell everybody something, I would say, or have some businesses with most retailers in America. And also, most importantly, and also for you guys back there, there's a big world out there. And if I was young, I would travel east, because America's tough. And I think we've heard today, it's a zero-sum game. If you're going to win, you have to take it from someone else. Go to China, go to India, go to these places that are, 10%'s a bad year. And there's a lot of excitement around the world, and that's where we're working. We're starting to buy a lot of worldwide brands, and we've joint ventured with great companies around the world, taking our model around the world. And we're big believers of global growth. This just shows how we're going the last 3 years, and our goal is to get to 40% in the next 2 years. We think we'll be there, 33%. Joint venture partners in Latin America, Europe, China, India, and growth businesses. We think there's big parts of the world, and we have joint venture partners. We realized we couldn't be strong sitting in New York. We had to find who is the best person in China, and we partnered with this Silas Chow and his family. Who's the best person in India? We found Reliance Brands. And who's the best person in South America? So we went and we made joint, gave them all of our IP, all of our marketing, and they have tremendous contacts, and we're opening up, large stores throughout the world. And this just shows in Latin America today, nice businesses with Walmart Mexico, Suburbia, Falabella, Sears Mexico, big business. Umbro is a new brand we just bought with, has a tremendous business in South America. In Europe is a little more difficult, as we heard this morning, but we're starting to buy a lot of IP out of Europe, and our last two acquisitions, Umbro and Lee Cooper, have come out of Europe. We see huge opportunity in China. We've already opened up 500 stores. Here we're taking equity in companies because the Chinese don't like to pay royalty, and they don't understand the concept, but they do understand that to make us partners, to give them strong intellectual property. So we're doing public offerings with them, and Silas is helping them grow their businesses. In India, we just started with Reliance rolling out for some of our customers. Just a couple of quick case studies just to show you what we do, how we add value. This is a brand that we did with Macy's, and actually we started during about 2 or 3 years ago when the world was a little different and there was not so much bank money. So we kind of created a brand called Material Girl, but we had an iconic figure in Madonna. And what Iconix does is we do all the advertising, marketing, public relations, branding, and we work with, Macy's has an incredible team with them, and we're doing all of this different, a lot of social marketing between the companies. And we do front side, we've done a lot of, every season we try to do a new girl that Madonna chooses, and we've had Kelly Osbourne and Georgia May Jagger as our current girl. Tons of magazine marketing between the two companies, over 2.5 billion impressions and PR. In our mind, PR is the new advertising. Get a great celebrity, do great social, do great marketing. You can hit hundreds of millions of people without spending a lot of money. A lot of press and a lot of billboard, et cetera. This is something Macy's, as Terry said before, spent a lot on the social side and also on e-commerce. And it's close to 10% of the business, which is, and growing, which just shows the power of how, of social, especially to this millennial generation. A lot of time, we have a whole team that does the social media. Macy's does a great job. And we also, the concept, if you look at all the Iconix brands, all 33 we have, the key is that they span lots of categories and our lifestyle. We don't look, someone says, I got a great kids brand, I got a great men's brand. We're looking for brands that are lifestyle brands that you can grow and work well in all product categories. One last, Peanuts is an exciting brand for us. We bought it about 2-3 years ago. We've done close to double it, but we're seeing over the next 2 years, we're planning to take it to over 150 million in royalty, close to $3 billion of sales. And Charles Schultz was an innovator, tremendous businesses in China and Japan and all over the world. And we have direct-to-retail deals with Uniqlo, H&M, Benetton, Forever 21. Big worldwide. It's amazing. You go around the world, everyone knows Snoopy and knows Peanuts. And this is one area we've brought to when we bought it from Scripps, an old line newspaper company, and the Schultz family. We just been working on the whole social side and have made incredible progress. Video games and all sorts of interesting ways. Our goal is we have to educate the next generation, and which is what we've worked hard on. And the big one is we got a movie coming, which we've convinced them, and we have 20th Century Fox is doing this incredible movie next 2015 with Peanuts. So with that, I apologize for the AV problems. Open it up for Q&A if there are any. And thank you all for listening and hearing my story.
As the CEO for a global company, as you look into the future of the company, what keeps you up at night?
I have an 8-year-old daughter, and and she likes to sleep in our bed. That's a good question. Lately, I have been sleeping really well. I had a tough time sleeping for about 2 years in looking for acquisitions. There was a dry time for some reason. And over the last 4 months, we've bought 3 great companies. We bought Buffalo Jeans, we bought Umbro, and we bought Lee Cooper. And there's so much great IP that's for sale today. But it used to be acquisitions. Also, just working with our retailers, making we're on track, making sure they like our brands. But it's a wonderful model. When I used to make shoes, it was really hard sleeping at night between worrying about my chargebacks, worrying about the value of my inventory. I never knew what my profitability was until my accountant came in 3 weeks after the quarter and told me what was going on. Here, it's like we have incredible minimum guarantees, great best-in-class partners, and I sleep real well, besides for my little daughter. Yes. But also always looking for the next deal. I'm a deal freak, love brands.
I like the chart that showed that you do the fun stuff and somebody else does the not so fun stuff.
Right, the heavy lifting, I call it.
Who oversees the manufacturing and product development and product quality?
Every brand is different, but in the big retail brands, we have amazing partners in Walmart and Target, and they do, quite honestly. We obviously see the line every quarter and advise and work with them and give them our opinions, but they care. They feel that these are their brands. Massimo's been in Target for 14 years. It's almost 15% of their business. They care more about it than I do, maybe. But they're pretty passionate. And I used to, when I owned one brand, Candies, I was freaky on every little SKU. And I used to say a brand is like a child. You've got to treat it well. You've got to every day get it dressed and send it off and treat. Today we're running an orphanage, so we have to. So the key to our deal, the key to our business is the partner. You get a good partner and they make great stuff and they care. Get a bad partner, you got big problems. But we also have design teams and people overseeing, and sometimes they get mad when I minimize them. Any other questions?
Are there any products or commodities that don't lend themselves to this business model?
I don't think so. I believe, I love a brand. I buy branded product, and I love the fact everyone came up there and said what brands they're wearing. I like Coca-Cola. I don't want RC. I guess RC is a brand if I'm saying it. Or I don't want private label cola or aspirin. Or brands are critical, and I think it works on everything. As far as finding licensees that will appreciate it, some industries are better. When it's more of a commodity industry, brands are more important. When we're dealing in things like food or cosmetics and the margins are so high for the makers, we sometimes have trouble breaking in.